what's wrong with them? What's wrong with you for asking this question? Hello and welcome back.
Hi, it's Debbie and Sean from Just a Different Life. In honor of Adoption Awareness Month, we're going to do a video.
And we thought we'd do videos on questions and comments that we've received that really aren't questions or comments that we would like to hear. Not just us, probably any adoptive parent would not want to hear. So, shall we start?
Let's start. Which one's your real child?
They're really all of our children. I don't know about real child. Are some of them made of rubber? I don't know.
It might be better to phrase it, if you really needed to know, which one's your biological child?
Yeah, which one's your biological child or children? Maybe a little more appropriate, but they are actually all our children. Are your children siblings?
Well, once they're adopted, they are siblings. Just like we are their parents, they are brothers and sisters to each other.
They just join the family at a later time, that's all. Just like a birth child at birth, they become an instant sibling.
So, can the birth parents come and take the kids back?
Oh, good question, actually. No, once the adoption has been finalized, it's not possible for the birth parents to come and take them back, at least not legally anyways. This is one of the questions that does come up quite often, and we don't actually mind answering that one, although we're not sure the intent of the question to begin with.
And once the children are placed, there is a period before the adoption is finalized, and truly anything could happen during that time, and the children could be removed back to the birth parents.
That is correct, and that can happen through the court system here in the province that we live in British Columbia. Leave us a comment below and let us know what it's like in your place, jurisdiction-wise, as far as as legalities go around the birth parents taking the children back. So another question, why did their real mom and dad give them up?
So adoption happens for many different reasons, and unless you're close to the family, there's probably no reason you need to know.
Exactly. This is a privacy thing, and it is for all parties that are involved. If you don't need to know, then why do you ask?
So what's wrong with them? Why did they get placed for adoption?
Ooh, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with you for asking this question? That sounds a little harsh, but in all honesty, is it really any of your business if there is actually anything wrong with them? They are who they are. They are people, and they are to be respected as people. Is there anything wrong with them? Nope. They're just like everybody else.
And everybody has their challenges, whether they have joined a family through birth or through adoption, and it's up to the family if they want to share that information.
Absolutely. So here's another question that we get quite often. What's their history, and were they abused?
And that's another privacy thing. You don't need to be sharing those things, and it's the personal information of the child, so really it should be up to them if they choose to share.
Exactly, and nobody really needs to know those things unless you want people prying in your personal life.
So how much did your child cost?
Say that again. How much did they cost?
Well, you adopted them, didn't you? Didn't you have to pay for them?
No. Children are not bought and sold, at least not in this part of the world. There may be some costs associated with adoption, usually covering legal aspects, lawyer fees and court fees and things like that. If you're adopting here in the province of British Columbia, the Ministry of Children and Families, there is no cost. They pick that cost up themselves. If you're adopting privately, there are legal costs that you have to go through, but to purchase a child, no, you're not buying children. Do they call you mom and dad?
So most of our children do call us mom and dad. When they first moved in, not all of them called us mom and dad. Sometimes they called us by our first names, and as they got comfortable, then they started calling us mom and dad.
The expectation is that they call us mom and dad, refer to us as that. but at their own time, at their own comfort level. We don't force that on them, but the expectation is that they do call us mom and dad, and it does happen quite naturally.
And for some of the kids, they've had so many care providers that it takes a little while for them to warm up to the fact that you truly are mom and dad.
Yeah,
and you're here to stay. That's
right. They get bounced around quite a bit at times in foster care, unfortunately, so it can be very confusing for them.
So this question is one of Sean's favorite. Are they all yours?
Ooh, not really an appropriate question as far as I'm concerned, but one that I do like to have fun with, and I will put people on the spot for asking this question. Quite often I'll just look them straight in the eye and say, you know, a man never really knows if they're all his. Maybe you should ask my wife. And that's usually enough to cause a great deal of embarrassment and put a stop to most of the questions from that point.
So we do tend to get this question because we have such a large family. So it's a large family / adoption kind of question.
Yeah, I honestly don't believe when people are asking these kinds of questions that they're trying to be rude or anything else, but sometimes they don't think when they ask these questions. Here's another comment that we get quite often. At least if they're bad, you can send them back.
Or if their medical issues get too much, you could send them back. We wouldn't send back a biological child if their behavior was bad, and we wouldn't send back a biological child if
they had medical issues.
And we won't do that with an adoptive child either. Once they join our family, they're our family.
I know there are some horror stories that are out there surrounding this, where people, for whatever reason, I'm not going to judge people whether they're overwhelmed, financially or cognitively overwhelmed when they adopt. So I don't want to judge people on this one here, but this is something that we hear quite often, and it may be just because people are hearing from bad experiences of others, that's all.
And truly, if a person can't parent the child, whether they gave birth to the child or they adopted the child, then they should seek a better home for the child. But to say, oh, just give them back because they're causing you problems, that's not an excuse.
Not an excuse for us anyways. And here's another comment that we hear. Oh, you adopted. I know somebody who's adopted.
Insert your horror story here.
Yes. It's quite often people will say that when they've got a story to share, and it's not always a positive story when it comes to adoption. Quite often what we term as a horror story of adoption, insinuating that that's probably going to end up happening to us. I don't know why people feel the need that they need to live in a doom and gloom world when it comes to adoption. It's truly not like that.
And chances are, we've probably experienced a lot of the horror stories. We just care not to share those.
That's right. Sometimes even more than our fair share of horror stories. But we made the commitment to them, and we've made a commitment to the rest of the family, and we follow through with our commitments.
And we like to think of all the positives and try and focus more on the positive part of the adoption and the fun parts of life than all the horror stories.
Absolutely. Oh, but they're so cute. Why don't their parents want them?
I don't really think it's a case of their parents not wanting them. I think it's a case of their parents aren't able to parent them. I don't know any parent, any biological parent that I've met that doesn't want the child. They all truly love their children.
They do. They're just not able to parent for whatever reason at that particular time, whether it be their mental or capacity or because of other issues that I won't get into. There's a reason why they can't parent.
Or they've chosen not to parent.
Or chosen not to parent, which is their personal choice.
But that doesn't mean that they don't love them.
That's right.
How about this one? Adopted kids have issues, or those kids are messed up. You don't want to get involved.
So do you really know these children? In all honesty, or are you just making a broad comment? You know what? I think a lot of people in this world could be considered somewhat messed up. It's not something that we focus on at all. What do you think?
I'd say that there's more positives and they far outweigh the negatives.
I would tend to agree with that. This is a complicated world that we live in, and some people do have some challenges in their lives, and adopted children are no different than anybody else.
And they didn't become adopted children because of their choice.
That's right. It was not their choice to become adopted. So I'd like to thank you for joining us today here at one of our favorite parks to go to. We've traveled here, left the kids at home today, and traveled here to do the video at this particular park. I'd like to thank you for joining us once again and being part of our family here on the channel.
And if you've got a comment or a question that you found that you don't want people asking, leave it in the comments below so then other people can see questions that you typically get that might not be the ones that you'd like to hear.
And thank you again for following us.
Thanks again.
Don't
forget to subscribe.
Bye now.